Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Sean, and this week I'm here with Edward Wald from the Palmetto Innovation Center. Hey, Edward, how's it going?
Hey, Sean, I'm doing well, thank you.
So we were talking a little bit beforehand, before we jump into the interview, and a comment that I made is that tech is kind of the coolest party I've ever been to, and I want to invite everybody I can to come and check out this party, and you agreed. So um, let's use that as a jumping off point. Give us a little bit of your background and sort of your mission in the world of tech, and where you're located geographically, because that is kind of a really unique part of your story.
Well, I'm located in Augusta, Georgia, but I'm very close to my hometown of Barnwell, South Carolina. So that's where I was born and raised in Barnwell. I've gone on this nationwide journey through IT of many different states, many different companies, from the East Coast to California to Silicon Valley, all over. I'm at a stage in my life where I've returned back to my hometown to do what I can to help. And so that's really my mission, is to do what I can to help people use my fortune and my talent and the benefits of what I've been given through my career to help others. And it's been a great journey.
Excellent. All right, so now Palmetto Innovation Center. I'm new to the South Carolina area. I've only been here for a few years, and I know the upstate ish. Right, I've been learning it over the last 4 years. What is the Palmetto Innovation Center? Is it regional? Is it statewide? I know you said that you're back in your hometown in Barnwell. Is it targeting specific places like that aren't quite as perhaps as big as, say, like a Greenville or a Charleston?
hmm Yeah, so the Palmetto Innovation Center is based in Barnwell, South Carolina. Barnwell is Barnwell County, and it serves Barnwell County, excuse me, and adjacent counties, Orangeburg County, Allendale County, Bamberg County, and some just right around. So we do radiate out to other counties, and we're involved with other counties. We provide a lot of different types of services. The coding class is one of the services. What we will really do is we help stand up individuals so that they can start their businesses, they can thrive in the career that they want to thrive in. They a place for them to go and work if they need a place to go and work. They don't have an office. If they want to make a podcast, they can go there. We have pretty incredible equipment where you can do podcasts, you can have meetings. We have meeting rooms, and we're associated with other centers where local to us that people can also use as a facility if they need, office space closer to where they are.
Great. So you're basically that organization is there to kind of reach people. It sounds like at multiple levels. Then, like if you're
Mhm.
just coming into the door to tech, or you're a little more established, you've got options to kind of reach all of those folks in that area.
That's correct.
Um, so let's talk a little bit then about your background. So
Mhm.
what led you into tech? How did you kind of find yourself in this tech thing? We were both sharing some, we both have our fair share of gray hair. So we were sharing some of the been on the internet for a long time story. So tell us about you and how you got to the point where you're at now, that led you to wanting to share your experience with other folks.
Okay. I feel I have quite an interesting story, and I mention that because so many professionals that I've worked with have interesting stories of how they entered into technology. Um, I I have sort of a many different kind of interests that I do. One of them is art. So I started out in art, and I still am an artist, and I do art essentially half the time,
Nice.
if you want to see it that way. So I went to Atlanta College of Art and studied there, and then I transferred to, after 2.5 years, to the University of Maine, where I got my Bachelor's of Fine Arts degree. Had a photography studio in Portland, Maine, doing products and people. In the mid 90s, when the internet started coming around, I started to get interested in the coding side of computers and what I could do to harness that and leverage that to help with my business. Most of my clients were from out of state, which was kind of interesting, living in Maine, but they were from out of state. So the internet worked well. So I created a website for myself. I'm like, I'm going to create this website for myself. And that way, when people ask about me, I can just send them to my website. Remember, this is back in the mid 90s when you were either on the phone or you were using your phone as the dial up modem. So this is a very primitive time
Right.
in computers that I started. And I mentioned that because for a couple of reasons, I'm going to digress here for a second. A couple of reasons. One is that technology has not really been here that long. Yet that we consider those the old days of technology, which is just an interesting aspect of the time and the period that we're living in right now. So I built my website for myself. I became interested in computers. Photography was going digital, from film to digital at that point, and I didn't really want to invest in all of the digital equipment. And it became more of, you need to set up
Right.
to have your photographs work with our printers, and it was a lot of configuration. It became more computers than it was photography. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to dive right into the computer world. So I returned to the university for 2.5 years and I studied computer science. And so I essentially have, if not a minor in computer science, a dual major with a bachelor's of fine arts in computer science. I have this left right brain thing going on. My brain just can't decide which hemisphere to
Yeah.
use. I'm very lucky from that aspect. And that has played out throughout my IT career across the software development life cycle in the roles that I played, which is mostly a consultant and a consultant role versus a full-time employee role. And then I got hired on by a firm out of Boston, Keene Incorporated, an excellent company that I worked for. That's where I cut my teeth and learned some just invaluable lessons around IT and software development and the software development lifecycle and so forth. And from there, it just continued on, and I continued to work from company to company. I found that um, for me, being more of a consultant, and Keene was a consulting firm that I worked for, but I worked for many different companies, Liberty Mutual, state contracts, and so forth through Keene. I found that I, for my type of work, do better going in and working on projects and sort of working myself out of a position. Right, I go in, I rescue a project, I help
Yep.
set up a project, I help train folks, set up methodologies with what they're, in their company so that they can stand on their own. And then I move on to the next project. That's just what fits me. Although I've worked with people who just love the heads down. I come in every day and I'm programming Java. I'm programming, you know, in a single language, working through, a sprint, which is like a 2 week cycle in the software development life cycle. Some people just love to do that. And I love those folks too. Um, yeah, it's been an interesting kind of journey, and a lot of folks that I've worked with have similar journeys. A lot are musicians because programming is very much like playing music. The way music is structured is similar to the way programming works with loops and so forth, and that. So there have been people from various areas of domains, of different type of professional domains that have assimilated into IT that has just made it a rich environment and a fun environment to work in.
Yeah, absolutely. And for some historical context for any of our younger viewers or listeners, phones used to be a thing that hung on the wall, and they had wires. And the the things that we have now are so very different, and it's crazy, as you said, to think that that was just 30 years ago. That
I know.
it was the thing on like we thought it was fancy when you didn't have the wire anymore, and and uploading web pages was a whole other kettle of fish. So you being able to do that then was definitely jumping ahead. And a thing that you said that I love is that you did come from that creative background. A lot of folks, when they hear about coding, when they hear about technology, I interviewed a student recently that said, I didn't think that this was going to be for me because I thought it was the thing that the valedictorians did. That the top performers in school. And it absolutely is. There are plenty of folks that go through sort of a traditional computer science background. But as you said, this field is so open and offers so much opportunity for people that come from creative backgrounds, people that come from sort of non-traditional backgrounds, and that bring so much into it, like you said, with the musicians and what you brought in with your art and photography. And I just absolutely love that. And that's largely why we're doing this series, is to share those kinds of stories for other folks out there that may not realize, hey, this sounds like something that is for me, and they're just looking at it from the outside in. And it's really great to share those kinds of stories. As you're working with students, have you seen your story have the kind of impact where it has opened those doors to folks that otherwise, again, coming from sort of the non-traditional computer science mathematics background, have you gotten to, I imagine you've gotten to see that impact firsthand?
I have, and it's quite interesting that a lot of the students that I work with are already in a professional field. They're already working for a company under some capacity, although it's not IT, or at least they don't realize that it's IT that they're working in. And as I go through, and I help a lot of folks with their resumes, so I'll go through their resume, and I'll help them update their resume so it points a little bit more toward technology in the areas that they are qualified in, but they don't realize they're actually qualified in those areas. So I have, some folks that have worked as like data analyst, where they're sort of a data analyst, and it's not really computer programming or anything like that. But what they didn't realize is that they're really more of a business analyst, where they understand the business domain so well that a BA or a business analyst is plays a major role in software development, where they're not necessarily coders themselves, but they need to understand coding to a certain level so that they know how to define requirements to be handed off to the development team. Right? What is feasible? What is feasible to be developed? Right? The better they do that, the smoother the whole cycle works, because they are at the very beginning of the software development cycle. So that type of relationship between their current knowledge and their role, or the types of activities that they are doing in companies, relating that to programming is like a gateway. It makes it much easier for them to not only understand programming, but to realize that there are so many different areas of different roles in the software development lifecycle besides just programming. There, and this is something that is truly seen when if you ever have the opportunity to go and visit an IT organization, like a corporate IT organization. One, for example, I was a vice president of accessibility for JP Morgan Chase, and we had a whole floor of a building, and on that floor we had BAs, we had visual designers, content designers, copywriters or UX writers, we had developers, we had testers, and we were all sitting back to back to each other. And when you're in that environment, and when you're hearing conversations behind you about colors, designs, layouts, as you're developing your code, and you're hearing coding going on, and then you meet with management and you present to the management team what you're working on, and you're working with management, you truly realize how many different roles and how many different activities are involved with computer programming, that almost virtually anyone can find some area, if they have the passion, to get into IT.
Yeah, it's almost as if uh, the technology has grown so quickly while still really being in its infancy, that uh, I think there are groups of people who are undercover programmers without realizing it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they're
A good
doing
way to
parts
put it.
of tech and they don't realize how integral their role is. Um, so along those lines, knowing that there's all these different things and where you are geographically, um, what are some sort of unique challenges that you've seen both either in your general area or tech at large? Is there any sort of like recurring, like we always run into this sort of problem? What kind of challenges have you run into?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one of the leading challenges that we run into, and it's understandable, is that IT is kind of a mysterious field. IT is sort of seen from the
Yeah.
outside by folks that are not in IT. It's kind of, in some ways, like a dangerous place. Like, I know if I go there, I'm going to completely fail because I know nothing about it. I'm going to feel dumb. And you know, you know, and this is not just for folks who want to go into IT. Most specifically, it's for the types of organizations and people that can support what we're doing. For them to truly understand the benefit of an organization that helps other people get into this field, to move into this field, especially around funding, because it's the funding
Yeah.
process is a very sort of scientific process, right? Where there are guidelines and there are committees. So that closing that gap and having the true value of what's being taught, of the the short and long term benefits of what's going on in these teaching environments and how that should be factored in, or trying to communicate to them how that, how important that is, because it is a mind shift. You're moving from truly from numbers and things
Hmm.
over into, we have to sort of think of the vision of what's going on here. We have to have some faith in what's happening. So I think that's one of the biggest pieces that's in there, along with what you've mentioned, that folks think they can't do it. And that's another thing that's happened, is that
Yeah.
when people come in and they start to see what's going on, they realize, you know what, I can do this. It's not as much math as I thought it was going to be, as you mentioned earlier. It's, there are areas of it
Right.
that deal
Yeah.
with helping the process itself without necessarily having to sit down and know the ins and outs of all the protocols of programming languages. So yeah, I think those are some of the bigger challenges, and those are some of the things that I see are changing somewhat, as a result of the successes that are happening as a result of these programs.
Absolutely. I feel like early on getting the stakeholders, right, the people that write
Mhm.
the checks, the people that do the hiring, to understand that someone coming from a program that's not, an MIT level computer science program is going to be just as good of a developer. What, even if they haven't gone to college, they've gone through a boot camp or they've gone
Mhm.
through some training, they've done a career shift, and they're bringing in some other stuff and getting that buy-in. Those doors have begun to open quite a bit, which is really nice. Now, have you over there in Barnwell, are you doing in person learning with folks?
I am. So I do in-person learning with individuals. I also do one-on-one in-person mentoring. So if they want to come meet on a day
Nice.
and just sit down with me, and we'll just do in-person mentoring, which I feel is very important, and especially in the infancy of learning computer programming, because there are so many different parts to a program. You don't just use one language, you use several languages together. They work on a computer, there's a server, there's a browser, there's so many different little pieces that you have to start by kind of failing in the beginning by not really understanding what all these pieces are while you're hearing them, to become acclimated to them before it clicks, before you can start using them. So I think the mentoring process, for me especially, is to help students get over that hurdle. We also record all of our training, so that those that can't make it during the class can watch the recording, and we also stream it across the web. So we have some folks that live, sort of a distance from where we are, and so they join online. So we have, a full variety of ways that are being taught, and beyond just in person.
Nice. So that's, you've got the opportunities to sort of meet people where they are,
Mhm.
which I think is going to be key. Most people coming in to deal with that intimidation. So it's fantastic that you have that set up. And I just to second what you said, that when you're bringing new people into these fields, having someone like yourself, my role as an instructor at Carolina Code School, to sort of um, uh, it's like walking a path and you've got a guide, and you and I as guides can point out, here's this and here's this, and be sure to look at this and watch out for that over there. And I think a benefit of the in-person and the mentorship programs is that it can give people a level of comfort that particularly, again, if they're coming in intimidated, that they won't have otherwise. How has the reception been over there in Barnwell? How have folks taken to a program? Any number of folks are going to come in, they're going to be really intimidated. So, and it sounds like they're absolutely in great hands. So, how's the reception been? How have people taken to the program?
The reception's been really good. There are some folks who have started
Nice.
that very early on decided it wasn't for them, and that's good too. You want to try something to know if it's the right thing or not. But for the most part, we've had really good success with that. Branching off of something that you mentioned about mentoring, one of the things, and I think you may relate to this, that I really enjoy about mentoring is that everyone learns differently, and everyone has a challenge in a little bit different area of IT that they're working on, and that makes it rich and fun for me to see that, and to see people, to
Absolutely.
see students when they accomplish something, when that page pops up and they see it in the browser, and just the expression on their face, that enthusiasm is what we thrive on in our environment and creating in our environment. We really work on motivating the successes, early successes, showing that they are capable. There's every week there's an accomplishment and a goal that's made, and we have some type of a deliverable or assignment that is completed every week. It's kind of like a mini Scrum. Scrum is usually 2 weeks. We have like a 1 week, just because it's so much information that we
Mhm.
break it up into smaller pieces, and then the that and that when, like we mentioned earlier, you have to hear their information first, then you start using it, you start learning it more, and then what we do is we cycle it over and over, where we revisit what you're learning, we revisit the code, and in different ways, like creating a personal HTML page based on the new things they're learning about HTML with the boilerplate HTML. And if people take these courses, they'll understand what that is. So not just the information, but having students use the what they're learning in different facets and in different ways, which gives them more reward. Again, which gives better acceptance from students, and it's been good because one thing we also encourage is students to work with each other, students to support each other, very much like
Mhm.
if you were in a real development environment. We structure our courses as though they are on a development team and a development environment across the SDLC. Our activities are structured that way. And I think that helps give everyone sort of a purpose. It allows them in their area, if they're more BA driven, to sort of lean on that and have successes in that. So that also helps with our acceptance and for people feeling, very positive about the program.
You touched on something there that I want to go into a little bit more. That I think is kind of a misconception about a lot of this career. I think folks come in, or folks from the outside that don't understand what you do as a developer, tend to think that it's just kind of one person sitting in front of a computer and that's all they do. But it is very much a team effort, a community effort. And you said you've done a lot of work as a consultant, which tends
Mhm.
to be a little more you go in as an individual. But even in those instances, it's never just you, right?
Oh
You're
no. Oh
going
no.
in and you're you're you, and you become part of a bigger team.
Mhm. That's true. The As a consultant, well, my early days with Keen, essentially when it was an IT firm out of Boston, And when a client needed someone to do something, if you were available, you were sent in to do it. And if you didn't quite know it, right, you weren't like an expertise in that area, you became an expertise in that area really quickly. And that's sort of how I cut my teeth in IT. I will back up a little bit and say that
Yeah.
computers, I'm fortunate, computers came easy to me. Like for some reason, I just understand computers, and I'm fortunate that way, that I do. So I was able to thrive in that type of environment at a very, sort of an early stage in my career, of doing that. When that happens, you tend to learn all the different roles across the software development lifecycle. You learn the BAs, the developers. Not only that, you learn the sort of the cadence of development. And this was back before Scrum Agile, before what we have now. We had more of the waterfall, which is get requirements, develop for 2 years, and give them the product, which is a waterfall process.
Yeah.
um,
I
so it
remember
was
those days not so fondly.
a very different world, with doing that. But nonetheless, it I learned, and because I'm interested in people and how people do things. I think is my curiosity help lead me to this. I've always been a watcher of people. I learned these different roles and what they did. So when I went into an organization, I could find the gaps. I could understand sort of, where the communication wasn't happening across the software development lifecycle. Nowadays, we have some great programs, that help manage that software development lifecycle. Back then, we didn't really. It was more primitive. It was a lot of email, a lot of Excel, and things like that. Not that those can't be used in some instances nowadays. It was different. So the when I went in, I was, it was expected that I understood every role and what every role did, um, to be able to solve problems as an IT consultant that went into whatever, this week it would be a different company than last week that I need to go into. So there, yes, it's very true what you've just hit on.
Yeah, it's younger me would have really thought it's like I'm just going to be this lone warrior that
Mhm.
shows up and writes some code, and none of my job has ever been that. Even on projects where I'm the lone developer, I'm never the
Mhm.
lone person working on a project. So um I feel, Edward, I feel like you and I could end up talking about like the days of yore on the internet for hours and hours. So let me flip the script and let's wrap up on this. Where do you see things going in the future? What do you wish for? What would you like to see happen with the organizations with which you work? For new developers coming in, kind of vision cast a little bit of what you would like to see happen and where you think things are going.
Yeah, as we mentioned in the beginning, or maybe we were talking before the interview, we're just in the infancy of technology. Technology is around us all the time. We've integrated it into our lives so quickly. They the jobs in technology are only going to increase. Every company uses a computer now. Every company has a website now. Even smaller companies that 10 years ago would have cost them you know tens of thousands of dollars to create a website can go on the computer and in one day set up a basic website for themselves now. Technology is just moving what I like to consider faster than the speed of light. There's going to be such a great demand for technology, and the merging of the ability to create things, create websites, and to produce in a simpler way with the need, with the demand from the industry, I think is where technology is going. I think that it's only going to increase. I think that um, I think we're about to enter in the latter half of the 2020s, we're going to enter a period of time where there's going to be a shortage of resources because even with AI, with artificial intelligence coming out, and it is amazing with what it can do, but it's in the end, it's going to take a person. It's going to take a person to do that. So, where's
Yeah.
technology going? I think we're going to enter, the next phase. We're going to start to enter the next phase, which we will be retired by the time it really probably gets ramped up. Which is
Yeah.
still saying a lot because that is how fast things are and how fast things change. in terms of the types of uh, resources that people have to learn this, I think those will also increase. I think that, even those schools have, learning, coding classes and things like that in schools, I think it's going to become much more embedded into our culture. In the early days, I got sort of swept into IT, because it rose up around me. And I think that it is going to continue to do that
Yeah.
at an exponential rate moving forward.
I suspect that this is very similar to you. The job that I have today didn't even exist for me to go to school for when I was starting college
Mhm.
and in high school. Like these jobs didn't exist, and I am almost certain that there is, some young person in is about to graduate high school today, and in 5 years, the job that they have is going to be a job that didn't even that doesn't exist here in
Mhm.
2024, and I agree. We have not. We are just scratching the surface of where all this can go. And it is fantastic that we have folks like you that are out there that are kind of helping shepherd new folks into the industry, helping sort of pave the way and sharing, a lot of the stuff. When you and I were coming up, there weren't people like us
Mhm.
to kind of say, hey, this is how this works.
We learned from viewing source on a web page and going in
Yep.
and taking that code and breaking it to figure out how it worked. Right. That was the
Yeah.
source code was our mentor back in the early days. I'll finish up with this real quick. Is that um, on one of my I set up a automation testing department for a company for the merger of two banks into one bank. So it was quite a big project. And on that
Oh,
project,
yeah.
we were using a software called Quality Center, and it's a piece of software that helps manage the testing process. And I interviewed for that role, and the person that I picked for that role was had only a high school degree, but they were so thorough with the QA admin structure, how to set it up, how could solve anything with that piece of application. This is just one application. This is not all the different languages that coders need to know nowadays. It's a single just application that they specialized so much in this application. They created sort of a demand for themselves. They made their own
Nice.
place in IT based on where their passion was. So, and then that happens is happening more and more where like these types of resources that we have nurture those types of possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a wild and interesting time,
Mhm.
and again, the rules that we all used to follow for this is what you do to go, and you go to high school, you go to college, you get your job, you do this, you work at a place for
Mhm.
30 years. Those rules, they don't apply
Mhm.
anymore,
They don't.
and it's fantastic. That we get to, it's really exciting, plenty of times, and I suspect you might agree, I feel like I work at Hogwarts, where
Mhm.
we're just teaching people how to be wizards because the world
Mhm.
is changing so rapidly and how to navigate that. Uh, I, I also think I want source code was our mentor as a T-shirt. That that seems that's a wonderful slogan. Um, Edward, thank you so much for
You're welcome.
coming and sharing your story with everybody here. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. If folks want to reach out, find out more about what you're doing at the Palmetto Innovation Center, or reach out to what are some good ways for folks to get in touch with you?
The Palmetto Innovation Center.org is a great website to go to. That's the website. That's our agency website. If the people want to reach out directly to me, my company is HCI Factors. HCI is Human Computer Interaction. So HCI Factors. So it's info at hcifactors.io is my email address. So people are
Excellent.
certainly welcome to reach out to me and love to help people and to give advice and as you do. And if I don't know, Sean, what how to help them, I'm going to send them right to you, okay? Because I heard some outstanding things about what's happening on your end too that I'd love to hear more about at some point.
Absolutely. I suspect we'll have to have another. We'll have to have a little less structured. You and I will just hop on and share old man internet stories. I
Mhm.
think it'll be a blast to
Sounds
kind of
good.
talk about how those things have, how we've earned all of the gray hairs on our head. Edward, again, thank you so much. I will make sure to put all of that contact information. We will have that in the show notes for folks that are interested. Again, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thanks so much, Sean. Best of luck, and I'll hope we talk soon.